Welcome back to Veiled Vantage, where the veil between worlds is thin and the secrets of the unknown await. Tonight we journey into the chilling depths of true fear, uncovering 3 tales of isolated terror that will make you question the safety of your own solitude. Are you ready to face what lurks just beyond the threshold of your perception? Let's begin. This is the story of Mark, a young writer and an obsession that haunted him from the depths of a remote corner of Texas. As I read Mark's notes, a chill crept through me. Not from the passing autumn breeze, but from the shudder of imagining what he must have endured. Mark was a writer. He sought out a secluded Texas countryside, a lonely house nestled among vast, empty fields to find silence and inspiration for his new novel. He loved the feeling of being disconnected from the noisy world, believing this place would be a sanctuary, a new beginning for his soul. While cleaning the neglected yard, Mark stumbled upon an old well, sealed by a rotting wooden lid. He peered curiously into the inky black hole, but then thought little of it, assuming it was just a forgotten relic left by previous owners. However, the peace Mark craved was nothing but a fragile illusion, for as dusk settled, the unexplainable began to stir. On his very first night in the new house, as everything fell into an eerie silence, Mark was startled by a strange sound, a soft, melodious lullaby echoing up from the direction of the well. He held his breath, straining to listen. It must just be the wind through a gap, he told himself, desperately trying to calm his own mind. But the singing repeated without the rushed sound of the wind. It was steady, hauntingly steady, like a lullaby from some distant realm. On the nights that followed, the singing grew clearer, sounding like a woman's voice, pure yet filled with sorrow. Mark began to feel a strange pull, as if someone were singing just for him, inviting him to come closer. He couldn't resist his curiosity, and each night he would sit by the window, listening to the mysterious song. Gradually, the content of the singing changed. It was no longer a meaningless melody, but transitioned into incomprehensible whispers, and then to fragmented, vague sentences about a promise, being buried, and the truth. A growing unease settled in Mark's heart. He began to research the history of the house and the well. But the elderly neighbors would only shake their heads, their eyes filled with evasion. And then the true horror began when the singing was no longer a whisper, but an unnerving invitation. One night, as Mark was in a restless sleep, the singing suddenly became incredibly clear, as if right at the mouth of the well, reverberating throughout his room. The voice whispered his name, then uttered a clear, haunting phrase, a chilling invitation. "Come down. The truth is down here. Come to me." At the same time, Mark felt an invisible force pulling him towards the well, an icy breath radiating out, piercing his skin. He could smell a heavy, moldy, earthy scent wafting up. He nearly stumbled headfirst into the pitch-black opening, a primal fear suffocating him. After that horrifying moment, Mark panicked. He quickly sealed the well with everything he could find: bags of cement, large rocks. He dared not go near it again, dared not even look in that direction. Since that night, the singing never returned, but Mark remained haunted by the voice and the sensation of being pulled down. He stayed in the house, but could never feel at peace again. Every night, as darkness descended, he would wonder what was truly buried under that well, and did he truly escape its invitation? Or is some soul still waiting, patiently, under the cold cement and stones? The terror of the open wilderness can be replaced by the terror of the things we invite into our own homes. The next two stories prove that a simple object can carry a weight far heavier than its appearance suggests, and that sometimes the reflection looking back at you isn't truly you. Story 2. The Echoing Mirror. This is the story of Olivia, a young student, and an object that brought her not just antique beauty, but a persistent haunting that cut through the thin line between reality and the unexplainable. Olivia was a student who loved old things, items that carried the breath of time. While wandering through a small antique shop tucked away in an alley, her eyes were drawn to an old decorative mirror with intricate carvings and a melancholic beauty. She bought it, placing it in her bedroom, believing it would be a perfect accent, bringing a touch of vintage flair to her modern living space. The mirror was initially just an ornament, quietly reflecting everything in the room. But then, that silence was slowly broken. Something was wrong. A faint sense of unease began to sprout from the mirror's glossy surface. Olivia started noticing strange things. Sometimes, as she walked past the mirror, a reflection that wasn't hers would fleetingly appear. A blurry figure moving behind her, or a face that would flash and vanish instantly. She would rub her eyes, telling herself it was just a trick of the light, or her vision was blurry from fatigue. "I must have imagined it," she'd reassure herself, but a feeling of dread lingered. Then strange sounds began to emerge. Olivia started hearing faint whispers, as if echoing from within the mirror, especially at night when the room fell silent. The whispers were sometimes weak reproaches, other times choked sobs, and sometimes they turned into a mysterious, incomprehensible invitation. She couldn't tell if the sounds came from outside or were just echoes in her mind. Stranger still, sometimes the mirror's surface seemed to ripple slightly like disturbed water, or her reflection would become subtly distorted for a few seconds before returning to normal. Olivia felt as if something was looking out from within the mirror, not just simply reflecting her image. An unseen, cold gaze was always following her. The fear gradually accumulated until one night, the boundary between reality and nightmare completely collapsed, and Olivia had to face the most terrifying truth. One night, as everything fell into a deep stillness, Olivia suddenly woke up with a start. She looked into the mirror and her heart seemed to stop. Her own reflection in the mirror began to change in a grotesque way. Her face distorted, aging with every second, and behind her distorted image, a woman with long hair obscuring her face slowly became clear. At the same time, the whispering she had been hearing turned into a clear, agonizing wail emanating from deep within the mirror. "Help me. Get out." The mirror's surface became ice cold. A bone-chilling wind passed through it as if freezing the entire room. Olivia felt an invisible, cold force pulling her hand toward the mirror as if trying to drag her inside. She saw the image of the woman in the mirror reaching a pale, gaunt hand towards her, her fingers trying to grab her, to pull her into its dark abyss. In a state of extreme panic, Olivia lunged for a thick cloth and covered the mirror. She wrapped it in multiple layers as if sealing a horrifying entity. She tried to throw it away, but couldn't. The mirror was impossibly heavy, as if held by an unseen force. From that night on, the mirror was kept covered, hidden deep in her closet, never to see the light again. But even though the mirror was no longer present, Olivia remained haunted by the grotesque reflection and the whispers from the past. She always felt an unseen gaze following her, a part of some soul still trapped, still waiting. She wondered if one day the mirror would reveal its secret again, or find a way to pull her into the other side, so she too would become part of its eternal haunting. From the whispers of a forgotten well to the torment of a cursed mirror, we now turn to a final, chilling tale. Sometimes a piece of the past can be found in the most innocent of places, and a child's toy can carry a presence far older than its porcelain smile.
The last story I want to tell you is about Lily, a young woman with a passion for collecting antiques, and an old toy that brought her not just the beauty of the past, but a cold presence, an unrelenting stare. Lily was a young woman with a whimsical soul who loved to seek out antiques, items that carried the breath of time and untold stories. One afternoon, wandering through a dusty old antique shop tucked away on a quiet street, her eyes fell upon an old porcelain doll. Its large, round blue eyes stared straight at her, and the innocent smile on its porcelain face seemed to be an invitation. Lily was captivated by its unique appearance and melancholic charm. She bought the doll, placing it in a prominent position on her bedside table in her bedroom, believing it would be a unique accent, a silent companion. But then that silence was slowly broken. Something was wrong, a feeling of unease that began to creep out from the doll's very presence. Lily started noticing strange things. Sometimes when she entered the room, the doll would be facing her, even though she hadn't touched it, or one of its arms would hang in an unusual way. She would dismiss it, telling herself it was just her imagination, or perhaps she hadn't placed it securely. "I must be mistaken," she'd reassure herself, but a small unease lingered in her mind. Then, strange sounds began to appear. Lily started hearing faint, clear giggles, like a child playing, echoing from somewhere in the room, especially at night when the room fell silent. The laughter was elusive, sometimes near, sometimes far, making it impossible for her to pinpoint its origin. And what was more terrifying, Lily felt that the doll's blue eyes were following her every move. No matter where she went, if she turned her back or turned around suddenly, she still felt it was staring. Sometimes the smile on the doll's face seemed to widen a little in a baffling way that made her shiver. The fear gradually accumulated, until one night the boundary between reality and nightmare completely collapsed, and Lily had to face the most terrifying truth. One night, as Lily was in a restless sleep, she was suddenly jolted awake by a giggle right by her ear. It was no longer a distant echo, but very close, bone-chillingly cold. She opened her eyes, and a scream was caught in her throat. The doll was no longer in its usual spot on the bedside table. It was sitting on her bed, right beside her pillow, its large blue eyes wide open, staring at her. Its smile was no longer innocent, but grotesque, a mysterious and terrifying grin. She felt a small, ice-cold hand lightly touch her cheek. At the same time, a ghostly child's voice whispered in her ear, "You're sleeping, but I'm awake." The doll slowly turned its head, its arm gently moving as if it wanted to hug her, to pull her into a never-ending, inescapable game. In a state of extreme panic, Lily scrambled up, grabbed the doll, and threw it into the outdoor trash bin. She dared not look back, dared not think. She tried to return it to the antique shop, but when she went back, the shop was closed, vanished as if it had never existed. From that night on, Lily never saw the doll again. But even though the doll was gone, Lily remained haunted by the echoing giggles in her head and its blue eyes that seemed to follow her from every dark corner, from every old object she saw. She always wondered if a child's soul had been trapped in that doll and if it would find its way back to continue its terrifying game or to find a new friend to haunt forever. How do you feel after these 3 stories? From the watchful eye in the empty apartment to the stalker in the woods and the giggling doll in the darkness. Is it possible that real fear isn't what we see, but what we feel? The unanswered questions and the invisible shadows that creep into our sleep. If these tales sent a shiver down your spine, hit the like button, subscribe to Veiled Vantage, and ring that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the unknown. What are your thoughts? Which of these stories did you find the most unsettling? Share your theories in the comments below.